and welcome to Lounge Ronin. All things, everything. And before we get into it, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell. And please, feel free to leave a comment with your thoughts below and some constructive criticism, as that will help the channel grow. And on this episode, we're going to discuss the Giants of West Virginia. Now, I happened to just stumble onto this article about a minute ago. And I was so intrigued by it because I can't help myself. I love talking about giants, and I love talking about elongated skulls. So I figured we get right into it. So without further ado, let me pull up this article. Now, I apologize. We got some monsoon rains over here, so you might be hearing some heavy rain in the background. But here we go. This was updated January 27th, 2022. It's written by Jason and Sarah. The Giants of Doddridge County, Burials of a Vanished Race. Part 1. Author's note. This article contains reference to an anonymous source. Although we have a rule of not using anonymous sources in our published work, we have made an exception in this case, since we feel that the possibilities yielded by this investigation could be of some importance. Alrighty. In the summer of 1930, a series of newspaper articles appeared describing the most sensational discovery: a race of gigantic beings unearthed from 2 burial mounds in Doddridge County, West Virginia. According to the Clarksburg Daily Exponent for June 15, 1930, in an article entitled "2 Prehistoric Indian Mounds Found Near Morrisville" by Bruce Horton. The mounds were located on the farm of Benjamin Zahn in Morrisville, 12 miles west of Salem. The article mentions that Professor Ernest Sutton of Salem University carried out excavations. Burials of a Vanished Race. The article makes remarkable claims regarding the now vanished race found buried in the mounds. The particular tribe or race which exhibited this section of the state is believed to have been composed of individuals ranging from 7 to 9 feet in height. Quote the article. Of the 2 mounds, the Exponent article notes that one, being 6 feet in height and nearly 15 feet in diameter, contained a type of megalithic chamber shaped from large flat rocks, which was carefully and tightly packed with clay. Within the chamber was one sitting burial considered to be a chief. The Exponent explains that the second mound was 10 feet high and about 60 feet in diameter. featuring 3 burials, one of which was a man of height, strength, and power, measuring over 6 feet, 6 inches tall, buried near the center of the mound and carefully covered by flat stones. Another skeleton from the same mound is described as being hermetically sealed in a case of clay. That's really interesting. Now, if you are familiar with, then you'll know that there are countless stories throughout the U.S. articles discussing massive, giants, and not only these giants, but also like these stories that you get from the Native Americans of encountering these races of giants, or in the articles talking about caves filled with giant bones. And yes, some are, of course, I'd be foolish not to mention that yes, some turn out to be people grifting and things like that, but there are those that tend to carry a substantial more amount of merit to them. And there's the fact with the Smithsonian and destroying bones and artifacts. We have to keep in mind that the Smithsonian is an extension of the federal government. And as we all know, the federal government is keen on suppressing, obfuscating, lying, and hiding the truth. So we cannot be surprised when such stories like these are told, and some of it is fantastical, but then some of it is confirmed. There's data, there's evidence to prove of these existence. And to find it in West Virginia is really interesting, but I don't know how many people even realize that we have pyramids all over the United States, and North America included. All right. Another article entitled "Salem Professor Discovers Huge Skeletons in Mounds" appeared in the Charleston Gazette for June 15th, 1930. According to the Gazette, the mounds contained what Professor Ernest Sutton, head of the History Department of Salem College, believes is valuable evidence of a race of giants who inhabited this section of West Virginia more than 1,000 years ago. Again, 4 burials were mentioned from the 2 mounds, measurements indicating they were from 7 to 9 feet tall. The burial sealed in clay is again mentioned with the measurement given of 7.5 feet tall. 1,000 years ago. Now, what I find really interesting about that is, this whole idea of giants not existing and not being prominent is foolish to think when we have stories of giants in South Africa. South America. We have stories of giants in Afghanistan. Well, yeah, the Middle East. And, in Afghanistan, we have stories of giants all over the world in many ways, shapes, and forms, even in Asia. So to think that at one point it was possible that there could have been either a worldwide civilization of giants. It's possible. We already know that there was at one point a separate humanoid species that did proliferate South America and what seems like Europe. If you know how I said earlier, I like talking about the elongated skulls. Well, that right there is case in point. But here we have a picture, and this is what's kind of funny, right? Is a artist representation of a North American giant. And if you notice, as I was just saying, the elongated skull, this protruding skull. Now, I don't know if we could make the case that there may have been, giants with elongated skulls, and then these lesser humans who were, humanoid but with elongated skulls. And if you know anything about these elongated skulls, they have this, we have this suture bone in the back of our skulls that, lets us know, okay, this is a human skull. They don't have that. So that is an actual biological way of distinguishing these two separate human races, or I should say human species. And the fact that the Cornwall Museum in the UK has known about this since the late 1800s should tell you that this was common knowledge to these institutional elites who at the time were investing copious amounts of resources into creating the narrative around our history and suppressing the true history. Hence the reason, why we have so many cases of the Smithsonian, destroying evidence. So many cases of just, whether it's even in regards to, Zahi Hawaii, who used to, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name, but who was the head of Egyptian antiquities, the corruption that he was, instituting over there with the Egyptian antiquities and the suppression of knowledge. I mean, all of this stuff is so prevalent, and all we have to do is a little digging and watch occasional documentaries or interviews with people who push and challenge these narratives, and you realize that wow, we're definitely being lied to and being suppressed. And just the fact, with this, depiction of this North American giant and the elongated skulls of, Paracas in Bolivia and Peru, and even the ones in, was it Romania? They found elongated skulls in Europe. I don't know if they found any with any hair, but the elongated skulls that they have found in, and even the giants' skulls and depictions in South America show them with red hair, and even with the giants, some of them have depictions of them with red hair. Even the North American giants. So there's clearly something there. And I think it's foolish for us to be as if, that this current species of humans was the only one that may have proliferated, proliferated this planet. It's no different than being foolish and thinking that we're the only, living conscious, entities in the entire universe. That's foolish to think. Whether you believe in a source or a god or you're atheist, whatever it may be, it's foolish to think like that. That's, in my opinion, that's very arrogant and narcissistic to think of yourself like that, in such a manner. When at times, when we have this information out here, we can't even replicate some of the ancient technology of these massive megalithic structures. And for us to act like, we're the top dogs is foolish, when I feel like we're still cavemen. The only difference is, we got Twitter and iPhones and touchscreens. But, what other difference has there really been of us in terms of our progression as humans, as a species of consciousness, of freedom, of will, But like I was saying earlier, the suppression of our true history, the hidden history, that suppression also suppresses, fantastical technologies and ways of thinking that could transcend all of us into being greater beings. But, whatever it is, they don't wish that of us. And I think it's funny that, as it's stated here, that the Professor Ernest was saying that they probably were living around in North America over 1,000 years ago. And it's like, well, what was happening 1,000 years ago? What was happening 12,000 years ago? When you look at Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, and how this amazing astrological calendar was purposely buried. You have those cataclysms. You have the Younger Dryas impact. We are a species with amnesia, no differently than a species with no real history. But that's enough of the rant. Let's get back to it. The Smithsonian's acquisitions. I noticed we got some people in the live stream. I really appreciate you guys stopping by. Please feel free to hit that like button and leave a thumbs up in the chat if you're enjoying this stream so far. The Smithsonian's acquisitions. In the spring of 2015, the authors undertook an investigation of these discoveries made long ago. To begin with, the press articles all mentioned that Sutton sent the artifacts from the Zahn Farm mounds to the Smithsonian Institution. In fact, the acquisition records of the Smithsonian do note the donation of several artifacts from the Zahn Maxwell Mound, including a stemmed point slate gorget and a sandstone disc. The disc itself is mentioned in the press articles, noted as featuring several engraved lines on one side. These three artifacts were manually assigned to Ernest Sutton and Oris Stulter in the acquisition journal at the Smithsonian, with the date of the donation of July 9th, 1930. These are without doubt artifacts from the mounds in question, and the material can be viewed at the online Smithsonian Collection Center. Sutton himself published a paper detailing the excavations of the mounds in the 10th volume of the West Virginia Archaeologist in 1958. According to Sutton, the two mounds, dubbed Do 1 and Do 2, were located on Street Hill 400 feet above the village of Morgansville. Do 2 was Zahn Maxwell Mound, the actual dimensions of which were 10 feet in height and 75 feet in diameter. Sutton documents 4 extended burials, one of which was encased in a type of baked clay, as well as the presence of red and yellow ochre in some burials. So here we have a picture of where the mounds appear to be. For my podcast listeners out there, Sutton refers to Do 1 as Zahn Mound and measures as 12 feet in diameter and 3 feet high. The report offers extensive details regarding the burial in the stone chamber mentioned in the newspapers. The body evidently been placed in a sitting position on a large flat rock with the legs extended toward the large mound. Skull, chest, and pelvic bones were in one mass on top of the rock. The leg and foot bones extended beyond the rock in the direction of the larger mound. I wonder if the positions were part of some kind of burial ritual. Interestingly, Sutton notes that even though no artifacts or articles of adornment were found with the skeletal remains, he and his assistant, Page Lacard, felt that the burial was very unusual, and that the person who was buried here was of more than average importance. Page Lockhart himself seems to have had great interest in this particular skeleton. Quote, Mr. Lockhart collected the bones and took them home with him. Interesting. Sutton later removed the large stone upon which the skeleton was found, uncovering 4 cachet blades, pipe fragments, a bone awl, flint scraper, black arrowhead, and a bluish-gray banner stone broken in two. Significantly, a comparative study reveals that the newspaper accounts published 29 years before Sutton's own document were almost perfectly accurate in their details. For example, the Clarksburg Daily Exponent notes that the first evidence of burial in the Zan Maxwell Mound was charcoal lumps and some evidence of burnt bone, found in an excavation trench from the east side of the mound. So here we have what was found at the mound. So we have the arrowheads, we have the disc. All right. And below the picture it says, this entry was abandoned and two other openings made later as I progressed toward the north side of the mound. In each of these openings, skeletal remains of ribs, arms, and legs were found, and in each case, the extended positions of the skeleton was evident. One hematites hemisphere and one gorget and one circular disc, approximately 3 inches in diameter and about 3/16 of an inch in thickness, and one arrowhead of dark flint, also 2 rectangular sandstone polishing stones. Man. And this picture was taken in 1958 of September. Sutton himself describes the same area containing dark organic material and bits of ashes and charcoal. The exponent also mentioned that the entire mound had been covered by loose rocks, while Sutton states that the mound was covered with good protective layer of rock, sandstone of varying sizes. The exponent describes a sandstone disc in 3 inches in diameter, with some report giving the same diameter and thickness of 3/16 of an inch. The exponent even accurately describes the artifacts discovered by Sutton beneath the large stone platform in the Zan mound. Quote, beneath the large rock upon which he sat were buried his pipe, banner stone, arrowheads, spear points, and other instruments chipped from flint rocks. So, all I would say his personal belongings, things he held dear to him, which would be appropriate. Sealed in clay. Regarding the body being hermetically sealed, the exponent suggests that the body had been covered and sealed in clay, which was then heated in a process during which many different applications of clay and many different bakings, which mirrors Sutton's own interpretation that the body had been cased in the puddled clay and then the clay baked or heated. The Charleston Gazette mentions that this skeleton enclosed in a casing of clay was the best preserved in the mound, with all the vertebrae and other bones excepting the skull intact. This matches Sutton's description of the burial, mentioning that this was the first complete skeleton found, that the skull of this skeleton still remains in the mound. The purpose of this digression is to illustrate that this rare instance of accuracy of a newspaper account of mound excavations can be discerned by cross-reference with the actual work of the excavator. The data presented by 2 press articles is of near accuracy in regards to those features also described by Sutton himself, except for some discrepancies in the mound size. This is in stark contradiction to the assumptions of critics of giantology, who frequently attribute the claims of the press relating to excavations in the 19th and 20th centuries to pure sensationalism. Giant skeletons. Well, what's funny about that, right, is I like to kind of joke around that we live in the age of conspiracy, and it's kind of ironic how so many conspiracies that were shouted at the rooftops turn out to be true. I don't think I need to really name too many right now, But I think many of us are very, very well aware that many of these conspiracies, whether it's in relation to archaeological rumors and discoveries, to pharmaceutical issues, to political corruption, whatever it may be, constantly it turns out to be the case that, oh, Alex Jones was right, or oh, he was right, whatever it may be, whoever it is, it turns out, oh, wow, it's true. And then they end up admitting, yeah, it's true. Yeah, we did that. Yeah, we did kill JFK. I mean, how many instances of that have occurred where, and especially here in the United States, someone, is with their tinfoil, kufi is shouting at the rooftops telling you the truth, and then the truth comes out, and the government's like, yeah, we did that shit. What are you gonna do about it? And then they just go on about their business, and we're stuck here with our thumbs up our ass trying to figure out what the hell just happened. And I would say that for the normies, but for many of us who've been wearing our tinfoil hats, we've been like, we told you. And even in regards to, these fantastical archaeological discoveries, how many times, for instance, Graham Hancock with his Younger Dryas impact, they made a mockery of that man, mocked him, ridiculed him, harassed him, everything you can imagine. And he still came out on top. And they confirmed the Younger Dryas impact. I mean, so what are we, even for something like that, it's not necessarily a conspiracy. But here's a guy who presented an idea. He was like, hey, there's something here. And rather than investigating what he said, they ridiculed him. They harassed him. They tried to, destroy his name. I mean, the man is banned from going to Egypt, to going to the pyramids, all because he challenges the narrative, and all because he proves them wrong. So, like, just imagine that. Imagine, especially when his, Ancient Apocalypse series that came out on Netflix. I mean, he was, banned from certain places. They called him a white supremacist for challenging the narrative of our history. I mean, how crazy is that? The man's married to a woman who's Indian. But this is the world that we live in, where people who challenge the narrative and even bring, good evidence and data and research, and they don't have any ill intention. They're just like, hey, something's up. Hey, I'm calling out the contradiction. I'm calling out the lie, and I'm doing it in a respectful manner. What do? They demonize them. They ridicule them. They do hit pieces. They try to destroy their life. And this is something that we see time and time and time again. And you can be an average bloke and call out the narrative, do your own research, make a presentation, cite the sources, everything like that, and even you yourself can find yourself at the short end of the cancel stick. And you're not even presenting anything extremely controversial, but it challenges the narrative. And right now, we live in an age where the narrative is the only thing that must be adhered to. It's the only thing that we must listen to. And people who challenge the narrative, people who are of freedom of thought, of freedom of individuality, who want to learn more about the world and how they themselves, coexist with it, especially our own history, we're the enemies. And how ironic, we used to be the people everyone looked up to. Even if we were the crazy or the kooks, they'd still kind of hear us out. But now, they don't even want to give us the time of day, because they know more likely we might end up being right. And not necessarily on the nose, but I would say right now that the conspiracy community is 10 for 10 right now. And even when it comes to these kind of things, you yourself as an individual, if you're so interested, go onto Google Maps, look up these mounds, look up these things. I have. They call them mounds here because if they were to, clean them off, mow the lawn, you'd see a pyramid. And that's the last thing, the government wants is, a bunch of mounds being cleaned off and there's just a pyramid in the middle of West Virginia. And people are like, wait, what? Or the pyramids in Florida. There are mounds in Florida, and if they clean those off, they're pyramids. And, the last thing we need is Florida man, rocking out on top of a pyramid in Miami. So I'm having a little fun here. I hope you enjoy that. But the point being is, we have to push back against the narrative. And we as individuals, we have to kind of do our own research and look for these kind of articles, or look for researchers and listen to their presentations or their podcasts or their videos and make up our own conclusions and kind of formulate our own ideas around these, this hidden history, these ancient mysteries. And I think many of us out there, will be surprised that maybe the information that we look at and uncover or, rediscover, we realize, oh, I've always believed in that. I've just kind of been apprehensive to actually acknowledge my belief system. And I think a lot of us kind of struggle with that, where we have a belief system where we acknowledge and we want to give into a certain belief system that maybe other people will call us kooks and crazy, but we know that there's some data and evidence to prove that belief system, that there's something there. And I think we all struggle with that. But the trick is to kind of be able to find your confidence within your belief system, to be willing to be open to new ideas and perspectives and information, and constantly being able to just grow. And if you're wrong, you're wrong, and it's okay. Life goes on. You take the L's and you move forward, and you live it as a lesson learned. And that is a Ronin rant for you. Let's get back to it. Giant skeletons. One crucial element missing from the Ernest Sutton's report are the measurements of the skeletons. However, there is evidence between the two newspaper accounts in Sutton's report that would suggest that the claims of gigantic skeletons were also accurate. Both the Exponent and the Gazette attribute one gigantic frame to the John Maxwell Mound. The discrepancy is that the Exponent claims the 7 feet 6 inches tall skeleton was found near the center of the mound, while the Gazette mentions that it was the clay casted skeleton, which was 7.5 feet tall. Since both articles and Sutton himself know that the clay casted burial was the best preserved skeleton in the mound, we submit that this could have represented one of the two giants supposedly found on the site. The only other skeleton from the site with remains sufficiently intact for measurements, according to Sutton, would be the single burial of the stone chamber from the Zahn Mound. Since the press reports unanimously attributed the 7.6 foot tall skeleton to the Zahn Maxwell Mound, it would stand to reason that the single burial from Zahn Mound was the source of the 9 foot tall skeleton reported by both the Exponent and the Gazette. Could the extraordinary size of this skeleton have been the reason why Page Lacard took it away? And then I guess, the question then is, where is this 9 foot tall skeleton that Page Lacard took? Did he bring it back to the Smithsonian, or is it hidden in someone's personal collection? Which I'm not going to go on another rant about that, but I'll keep it short. The amount of personal collections that these ruling elites, these millionaires, billionaires, whatever, have, and the fact that some of these personal collections contain artifacts that probably would rewrite our history and probably would advance us technologically, We'll never know. I did a live stream talking about the possibility that Jesus Christ was a shapeshifter from this, expert of a religious text from the Bible. And it wasn't released until 20, I can't remember if it was the mid 200s, the mid 2000s, or I think it was around the mid 2000s that it was released. And it was part of the personal collection of J.P. Morgan. Ask yourself, why would J.P. Morgan have in his personal collection a excerpt from a Bible talking about Jesus Christ as a shapeshifter? But I digress. The point is that the amount of personal collections containing our true history probably is astronomically mind-boggling. There may be an explanation for why Sutton chose not to include the skeletal measurements in his report. In fact, the absence of measurements could represent validation of the gigantic size of some of the remains. It is important to note that Sutton's report did not appear until 1958, 29 years after his initial excavation in the summer of 1929. Crazy. Think about that. 29 years later. If you look into like the Chicago World Fairs and you look into some of the weird Tartaria, some of these weird things around the late 1800s, early 1900s, things get really, really fishy around that time. It's really, really weird. The Zan mounds were the first mound excavations and the beginning of the long career as an amateur archaeologist working in West Virginia and Ohio. It's just crazy. The report didn't appear until 29 years later. Hell, Pfizer didn't want their report coming out until the second coming of Christ. Alrighty. As someone working outside of the establishment, Ernest Sutton may have been initially unaware of the policy of secrecy enacted under the authority of Alice, excuse me, of Alice Hidrika. I believe he was the individual that started the Smithsonian. He was also a known eugenicist. Regarding the reporting of gigantic skeletons, he wasn't aware of the policy. As a result, these circumstances, Sutton may have gone public with what he considered to be very important anthropological discoveries in June of 1930, and then avoided the mention of the size of the skeletons in his official report filed almost 3 decades later. What? Wait. He didn't even file his official report until 3 decades later. Now, why is that? Like, do you think that maybe oh man, that's so weird. That's he must have known that they were going to suppress that information. But that's the funny thing about a lot of those articles. Now, I think maybe last month, the month before that. If you scroll back, you'll see I did a live stream on ancient giants and religious texts, and it's like this whole idea of, and even in there, these articles from these local newspapers, reporting on these recent discoveries, and it's always by these local archaeologists who are ever at that local university. They could be an anthropologist, what have you, and they're at the local university. They go, they excavate it, bing bang boom, this is crazy. They then reach out to the Smithsonian, the federal government. They come in, take everything, seal it away, never happened, doesn't exist. This is no different than the situation with the Grand Canyon and the fact that there was a cave in the Grand Canyon with treasures from Egypt, and these Buddhist shrines and all this crazy stuff. I did a live stream covering that. Why is it that NASA has no fly zones over the Grand Canyon? NASA's in Florida, but I digress. But my whole point is, that whole suppression of knowledge of the true history of our world, of North America, of the United States. So this is Alice Hydrica, the guy who is the archive of or who's the head of the Smithsonian at the beginning. So the Gazette article specifically mentions that the information came from Sutton himself, who had made some manner of presentation on the night of June 14th, the day before the article's publication. The extensive and accurate details contained in the exponent article may have been due to the reporter attending the same event, which could have been held at Salem University, where Sutton taught history and geography. The stigma against giants. There is evidence of the enforcement of stigma against reporting gigantic remains. In the Sun's subsequent work between September of 1962 and October of 1963, Sun excavated the Johnson-Thompson Mound in Athens County, Ohio. However, several issues prevented the official report from being published until July of 1966 in the Ohio Archaeologist. Several of these issues are outlined in the piece of correspondence between Ernest Sun and Martha Porter of the Ohio Historical Society, dated March 21st, 1966. Dear Miss Porter, your Lauder... Oh, God. Let me see if they had it. No. Let me see if I can... I'm going to try my best to see if I can read this. The latter noted March 15th, which grants additional time should provide sufficient opportunity to get this report in proper form. The Johnson-Thompson Mound report has been received in conformity with instructions and is now returned. I am aware to that some errors and the irregularities still exist, but possibly do not damage the report. By delay in completing this report has been due to the difficulty of locating the artifacts of flint material and the sandstone gorget, which have been distributed to the landowners of the mound area. Added to this delay was the difficulty in getting quality pictures. The Gorgol Loval photographer for the Athens Messenger came to my rescue. His work is very good. In my letter to you on March 9th, I reported that the bone alls, the upper jaw and teeth, and the bone etal handle had been devoid. I'm sorry, it's like very faded in certain parts. To delivered to Dr. Baby. Okay. When you folks visited me at the mound, this additional time will allow ample time for him to get this additional material photographed and added to the report. Your attention is directed to the floor plan, which shows the something of a single and ported post nodes in the northern sector. I think he's describing the mound. This is due to the location of the Whitcock tree growing on the northern boundary of the mound. This tree measured 15 inches at the base and part of the root system extended into the northern blocks just a few inches from the subfloor burials. This tree was located on the north-south line, which is the boundary of the two farms. As this tree was considered a property line tree, and the outing of the root system on the south side of the tree might impair its growth. Only soon, only small roots were removed. There was no indication of burials or ornations or other features in the abandoned area. Due to soggy ground conditions, it was impossible to obtain suitable pictures of burial 5 and 6. To this revisit Fport, I have added some additional pictures to point a choice. Something like I can't forget that last one. I note some questions by both you and Dr. Baby regarding my monument of burials and what formula I use. By examination and I can't get that one. I find that the length of the femur bone is approximately 1/3 of the total length. Okay. Among the questions addressed in Sun's methods are determining the height of the skeletons. I note some questions by both you and Dr. Baby regarding the measurements of the burials. Oh, you son of a gun. And what formula I use. By example of checking, I find that the length of the femur bone is approximately 1/3 of the total length. In the letter, Sun also assures Porter that the Johnson-Thompson Mound report has been revised and conformity with instructions is not returned. This is clear evidence that the large official organizations were enforcing specific criteria in the publication of archaeological data. In relation to this, the specific reference to the measurement of skeletal height in Sun's letter would indicate that the subject was among those bounded by these criteria. Interesting. So, we are essentially kind of getting, in conclusion of part one, we're now getting a clear kind of understanding of how this information is presented and how it's either being suppressed, and how certain individuals are willing to kind of, go against the narrative and the mainstream and kind of get this information out there. And even then, you think about it for, you could almost call him a whistleblower before they were, before the term whistleblowers, because he wanted this information out there because in his mind it was a extremely important archaeological discovery. And so many of these are clearly important discoveries that are being suppressed. I feel like if we were to know the true history of the United States, if we were to learn about the truth about the Aborigine Americans and, how black people have always been here, people would be losing their minds. So much of this history would literally just break people, mentally, spiritually, religiously. This is very jarring and dangerous information that would really upset many people, because unfortunately, when you are domesticated into a certain belief system, into a certain way of thinking, of behaving, and then to get such a belief system upended by truth, people will break emotionally and mentally. They'll lose sight of what it means, of the truth. And that's what happens when you keep the lie going for so long, that when you have people out there who are calling out the lies, who are presenting the evidence, it gets harder and harder to suppress it. And as I always say, the veil continues to get lifted. Every day people are waking up to many different things, whether it's regards to the, industrial, pharmaceutical, corporate oligarchs that, run this country, or if it's our true history, whatever it may be. People are waking up. People are listening to individuals out there who speak on this information and who advocate for us to go out there and seek this information for our own and make our own conclusions. So, I hope for everyone who's been listening and been enjoying this stream, please, make sure to leave a like and leave a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. And feel free to leave a comment with any interesting thoughts, feelings, speculations, or even things that you find interesting that maybe you'd like me to cover or discuss. Because I'm all ears. I love this kind of content. I love looking up these kind of things and sharing it with everyone out there, because I think it's important for all of us to kind of know about this stuff. And whether you believe it or not, as I like to put it, it's good to humor ideas, humor alternative views, to kind of understand where people are coming from and to kind of understand where this information originates from and its purpose and its intentions. So I truly hope that everyone really enjoyed this live stream and enjoyed this topic. We're gonna cover part 2 soon. It'll be this week. It may be tomorrow or it may be Thursday. But you'll know if you see the notification pop up. But for everyone who's been joined in so far, I really appreciate you guys. Please leave a like again or a comment. And I hope you guys are having a good start to your week so far. I really appreciate you guys hanging out with me this far. And yeah, keep up the good work, everyone. Stay positive. And until next time, stay positive, stay focused, stay true, and much love.